The Holy Order of Man's, Lecture 12, The Actions of Jesus, given by Father Paul, June 22nd, 1971, 81 minutes in length. This is the beginning section of this lecture. The rest of the lecture can be found on desk 12.
To write some work on the life of Christ and the Christian philosophy and so forth. And the fundamentals, what you might call the hickey-doos, which count, these are the things that count for so much. Jesus, in all his wanderings, in all his work, down through the 3 years, the actual little over 3 years altogether, had a group of people with him always, whether it was his disciples or the apostles or others. And much was said about him, but very little, when you come down to actually tallying up, very little was actually put down except some of the quotes, the actual quotes, and they're not very many when you figure it all out. You come down to analyze the Testament of what actually Jesus said himself that is directly quoted, or presumed to be directly quoted at least. There was not too much. That which was said was very fundamental and was said in a way that was very hard to mistranslate from the Hebrew and from the other languages such as Greek. But that which was said and was a direct quote, not a conversation with somebody else that somebody else told somebody else about, but the direct things which were heard by those who wrote the papers. Why, these were not too many compared with the rest of the Testament. But what was has certainly held true. But the thing that we are missing in many ways, and which takes considerable work and research to find, and that is the reality of how it happened and how he progressed with this through the many miracles, or what they call miracles, that he brought forth. More than anything else that has led the Christian church is the actions of Jesus. And perhaps you haven't looked at this. Most of the things that are written about and taught about Jesus were, and the Christian faith, what the Christian faith depends upon in the church, were the actions that took place. The things that he did with some of the words that he said, a few words, but much action. And those stood out more than anything else to form what we might call Christian ideology. Because as I went into some of these things and worked with them, and I'm still working with them, I find that the ancient teachings show up very pronouncedly through his work, not as to what he said as much as to what he did and his actions. And a very strange thing, of all the books that I have had in my hand, and not having read them all the way through, but gone through some of them, nobody ever came out to weigh and evaluate actually the actions of Jesus. In other words, his everyday action in life But actually here is the important factors in the Master's life that really say something. They really tell you something. These are things that are pretty hard to mistranslate. These are a matter of history, and there's more than one person talking about it, and then the stories jive. Now, you can teach people the do's and don'ts. This you can do. But what are they going to do about it? You see? You've always got to remember that a man to Jesus Christ is as serviceable as he's willing to give. And his usefulness to the Master is the only thing outside of his personal correction that you're interested in. I'll help a man to straighten out his own life, but I'm twice as interested in the man that's going to help somebody straighten somebody else out. But of course there is so much damn selfishness, and I mean that, the way I said it, in this world, that there are a great many people that don't want to. So when you get into this work, if you get into it, learn to evaluate your time. The time is a precious commodity as far as its existence is concerned. At least it's a good thing that you can use to follow through your life and use your life efficiently to gain your objective. I don't say there's such a thing as time. There isn't. But you can use it the same as you use a yardstick or a carpenter's rule. A carpenter's rule, of course, the 12 inches in the foot is taken from the steps of the pyramid. That's where it originated. But it doesn't mean that there isn't plenty of everything. But seeing you have to use some measure, it's all right to use it. But realize that you're only using it because somebody else says, well, I'll accept that measure too. As far as you're concerned, there's all that you need in the world. You're not limited. Well, the same likewise is it with time. You use this measure, but you know it doesn't exist in reality. And the same it is with people. You will help a man to help himself, yes. But when you find a man that's willing to help himself and help somebody else, then you'll put a little extra time to it. Because most of the people that are only willing and interested in helping themselves are very little use to the human race anyway. Let's face it. They're very little use. Because if they're that selfish, they're going to be that selfish in other things too. And they are not going to be the people that will put forth the effort to accomplish the job that we're trying to accomplish. Now, we want to help individuals. This is true. But set your time up. Do your work in such a way that you can multiply yourself, you see. Now, this is a creative pattern of function. You're not only helping one individual over here, but you're multiplying your own divine intelligence within other people. And as you multiply, where you can really pass this along, where you can really give it to another man that will take it and use it, then he will create others. And those others will create others. And this multiplies. This is following the creative pattern in teaching. And this is important. You've only got so many hours in the day, and you've only got so many days in the year. And you've got a job to do. You've been warned. You haven't long to do it in. It's like a fire breaks out. And it has. You don't go and grab the smallest piece of or cup or pan you got. You grab a bucket as big as you can get hold of one, and you get as much water as you can to pour on the fire. That's what I'm interested in doing. Getting as much water to pour on the fire as I can. And that means recreating in others the reality so that they can pass it along and heal and put other people in that same shape. There isn't everybody that's going to be able to be a priest or be a teacher or a teacher of the Bible or a teacher of philosophy. But you can try and make the effort to reproduce those that will. Because we cannot hope to do it of ourselves. That's for sure. And of course the power and the light moving through us will do a great deal. But we have to have points of focus, and we have to have points that are going out and carry this also. And it is following a creative pattern of teaching in order to look at it this way. Some people think it's a little bit selfish. Well, if they will feel that way about it, it's all right. But I know what is working and what will continue to work, and this is what I'm interested in. And I'm sure that this is what the Master is interested in, or he wouldn't have told us in the Revelation the way he did of what to do. I want to discuss for a few moments. Is there any question, by the way? Because I'd rather have discussion than I would anything else, truthfully. Yes.
Using the self, and you said we have to be able to use association in order to communicate. Is this the function of the association?
I'm trying to get how you're using this word. Use the self. Oh, pardon me. All right, I'm clear now. You're talking about what I discussed last night. All right. Yes. It doesn't make any difference whether it's 4 sausages or 4 beefsteaks. It's still 4, isn't it? Watch it. Or whether it's 4 buckets of water. It's still 4. You use the same figures to describe all of them, don't you? Well, it's the same thing in the basic laws, isn't it? But you've got to see them in the buckets of water as well as in the sausages.
This would also come up in asking self questions.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. But the simpler the question you ask, the more identify your question, the more sure you will be of your answer. Because don't try to ask self a question. Ask the question in a way that some people try to describe the reality of things, because it can give you see this many pages and you still haven't got anything, because he cannot define it in that method, you see. But if you ask it right down definite questions, you'll get definite answers. But you have to be prepared to take those definite answers too. That's for sure.
What about, shall we say, common, ordinary, everyday type of actions where we're not counseling, say building a closet or something like that? How does common sense and use of self, how do they work together in this? You're talking?
Common sense is actually basic facts and basic reality. If you're asking, and this depends, you have to qualify that question, of course. If you are asking whether you should build that clothes closet, that's one thing. Then you might get a no and say, wait 2 months. This you might do. But if you're asking how to build it, well, you ought to know how to handle tools first, somewhat, before you get into it. In other words, if you want to learn to do carpentering by the direction of the self, go get the tools and pick them up one at a time and look at them, examine them, and find out how you use them one at a time, because you got to have the tools first, then ask for the direction. That's like reading a book. I'm not going to go on the knowledge of the book, but I get a lot of good nouns and a lot of good adjectives and so forth by reading the book. It will have definite relationship to some things in life. You see what I mean? Yes. Do you have your hand up?
Well, I was just considering what you were talking about in the very beginning of the class about Jesus and his example or his actions. Not much had been talked about that. And I was trying to relate it to us. And I thought that, I was wondering if the point you were making, or one of them was that...
No, I wasn't making a point.
Well,
I was making just what I said.
you just said...
That's right. Of course, you could go a little further than that if you want to and say what Emerson said. Your action speaks aloud. I can't hear what you say. I'm going to make a record of that sometime. And this is just exactly true when it comes to brothers in the ministry, too, coming into the ministry. You can tell. Some of them have to be granted to come in, that you know that they're going to have some difficulties. But just the same, their actions beforehand will tell you what they're going to perform afterwards. And it really doesn't have anything to do with their intelligence. That's for sure. Yes.
Why was this done? Why was there? Why didn't they see it?
Why didn't they see it? Well, they probably saw it all right, but if you start to get into these sort of things, you're going to start to get into the realities of, and they'd have to explain it by the use of some of the old teachings, because he was taught in, don't forget it, in the Essene school.
Was it in the Testament, though?
Huh?
Is there in the Testament?
Yes, but that doesn't help to make profound theology that you can interpret, you know. This is where it is. Jesus wished to assume the Christ, in other words, wished to assume, and had to assume, a real flesh. He sanctified human flesh by a specific contact, he makes ready physically by his actions to the resurrection of the light body, spiritual body, in the cosmic Christian concept. The matter retained, that matter which is in the body and has received contact with the light, retains its cosmic role as the basic, though lower in order, but primordial and essential for the union with God. In other words, this is saying the regeneration, rebirth is real. Here we have action again. If you have had contact with the light, some of that substance will become part of your own soul being. What was the matter here? That's right. Thank you. By assimilation of it to the body, and as we join in this rank of those whom have received some light, we also are drawn into the form of the body of Christ. Some part of the matter is destined to pass into the foundation of the completed body, or the heavenly body. That is which we spoke of as in the Testament as the New Jerusalem. In the same way, if concern for progress and the real order, virgin order of things, of matter, and are given as their final end, the illumination, the fulfillment of the Christ, they will be transformed into a greater virtue or body, the body of light. They call this a greater virtue, in other words. It has been used in this respect because it is a virtue. It is not attained through a sacrament, but through a solar initiation. And so it is a virtue which has been attained. Which would be the widest form of love of God found and served in this creation. In other words, you are joining when a person goes into a state and acquires initiation. He is going into the widest form of Christianity that it can exist. He is encompassing all bodies of, and I'm going to put it this way, of narrow-minded people. When as quick as you have dogma, you have narrow-mindedness. You're joining all brothers together because it isn't something that comes out of a church doctrine or foundation or form. It is universal. Don't make any difference whether you're in this place or the Roman Church or the Greek Church or the Methodist Church or wherever you are. if you really experience it, you have joined a group on that level which is universal, and you are absolutely compelled to accept all people whom have experienced this. You can't help it. How could you? You see what dogma does to you? What even to far as a group of tenants, for instance, which the law requires. I think we spent 3 days trying to get not to have tenants in the order. So we got around it by having a striving. They could legally call these tenants. So we have a striving, a prayer, a striving, which is our criteria. But we worked on this for 3 days before we finally found a way out to keep away from anything that would have any confines within it. You see? But to keep it on a solar basis, keep it on the scale of Christianity, Christianity, the all-encompassing thing, the reality, which incidentally you cannot find anywhere else unless it's under some of the schools maybe in the East where you might find it going. But in no form of strictly denominated Christian plan can you find any order or anybody which absolutely teaches and acts upon that function. Nowhere. So you're in the funniest outfit in the world. But that's where it says. Because this is what Jesus was teaching. He wasn't teaching a church, per se. Because the church was within it. Within it. It wasn't it. Because the first thing he did was appoint the apostles, the disciples. This is where the foundation was. So, I'm not arguing with any other group, but they, as usual on earth, as usual, they get things backwards. They always do it backwards. Always. Every single thing that they teach it backwards. And I will stand by that statement, and I don't care who wishes to oppose me. And I'll prove that every one of their methods and their approaches is backwards on this planet. Unless they follow the cosmic system. It's the only way that these teachings are true. Their methods of education here are backward. Just reverse. Always. In every one thing. Man to whom it has been given to enjoy the cosmic vision, no longer vague, but distinct, that man may be truly be said to live in a zone into which the confusion of no multiplicity can penetrate, and in which, nevertheless, the work of universal fulfillment is the most actively pursued. Universal fulfillment. That describes exactly what we are doing. Exactly. Universal fulfillment. That is to say that to see Christ as more real than any other reality in the world, Christ's presence and growing greater in all things. Christ, the final determination and form of active principle of the universe. Of the active principle of the universe. This describes the Christianity in one paragraph. Nothing so complicated. The principle of unity, which saves our guilty world, which they do not understand, wherein all is in process of returning to dust, is Christ Jesus. Through the forces of his magnetism, the light of his teaching, the utility of the power of his very being, Jesus establishes again at the heart of the world the harmony of all endeavors and the convergence of all beings. Let us read the gospel boldly, and we shall see that no idea can better convey in our minds the redemptive function of the Word than the unification of all flesh in one and the same Spirit. And they don't know any more about unification than those cats do out there, because they'd be scared to death if they could get one good peep at it. How would you like to meet him here, now? Would you do the same as you have planned to do in the future if you were to meet him in person now, right this night, now? Or might you change your plans? It is here, present. Others were present last night at the solstice service. I was the only one that saw them. Others saw them. It is a nice word. They are pretty sayings. They are warming realities, warming things that we like to hear, because we like to think we are Christians. But down at the core of it, are you? Or are you just yourself, Frank or Jim or John? Are you? Ask yourself that question. Do you really think that you're living to promote the Christian teachings and help other people? Are you? Or are you promoting Tony or Rest here or somebody else? Because if you were ready to meet him tonight, without any qualms at all, I'm sure some people's thoughts in this room would be different. I'm sure of it. And I'm sure that if you knew, and in December of 1972 or 3, that this whole change was going to take place by that time, you'd get out and hustle your little fannies to get some of the work done that you need to do. Believe me, you would. You wouldn't be doing a lot of things that you're doing right now. You'd be doing some different things than you are, if you were sure of that. That's I know, because I've watched this process work for many ages. You know, I've seen people that we call cowards become valiant heroes when the emergency came. But it took an emergency to give them strength and to give them courage. Now, anybody that's trying to save his neck can have courage, you know. But it's when you're trying to save somebody else's that it takes real courage. And anybody can attempt to straighten out his life without too much courage, because he can do this very quietly, without being counted, or without letting anybody else know about it too much. But when he has to step out and be counted and give up his life so that he can help others, that's when the shoe begins to pinch. That's when the shoe begins to pinch. That's when we find out where the men and the boys are. And you see, this is just where it is. Because this is a cosmic thing, a real reality throughout the world. Therefore, the individual no longer can exist, because it is a cosmic thing he has to work with. This is a real reality. This is something that Calhoun, you can leave. I'll tell you, gentlemen, a little secret. I'm not going to be a easy touch anymore. It's going to cost. Jesus gave it. Now you're going to give it. 100% attention all the time. If I get boring, it's all right. Boring. I'll let you in on a little secret. You guys get pretty boring sometimes too when I have to repeat things over and over and over again to try to get through one simple little fact. So that's an even score. And that's a truth too, believe me. Divine Magnetism. Christ's primordial role, that means right down to the nitty-gritty, in other words. The very basic foundation is to draw to himself all that before him moved at random for lack of an influence powerful enough to guide their wayward path into a uniform direction. Intelligent creatures. My. We have seen, hesitated, and parted company for the universe to subsist. Even in its natural evolution, it was necessary, above all, that the dynamic soul of one and the same vigorous impulse should again be instilled into men. God chose the love of his incarnate Son as the prime mover of the restored universe. Prime mover of the restored universe. Let's go back and catch up a little goodie here. Did anybody pick up anything in that paragraph that reminded him of something that was said in the Testament? Yes. Yes, so that's in there in an indirect way, that's right. But one other thing that he gave in a command, almost. Yes, Fred.
I was going to say something else then. I was
Well,
going
go
to say,
ahead.
it took me an eye, we were all changed.
Yeah. Now, wait a minute. The role to draw to himself all that before him moved at random for lack of an influence powerful enough to guide their wayward path into a uniform direction. Intelligent creatures we have seen, hesitated, and parted company. Does that spell anything to you? It's in the Testament? Oh, come with your symbolism! Symbolism! Come on, wake up! Somebody put their hand up? Yeah.
He said, I am the way.
That's right. I am the way. And what did he say? Ye are my sheep. Well, that's what you do with sheep, don't you? Get them going all one direction. And then lead them. See, here's your symbolism, association of form and movement. Here's symbolism in action. And this was in the Testament. This is one of the outstanding things from a physical standpoint in the Testament was he was the shepherd. Goodness gracious. Don't tell me you don't remember that. Yes.
When Jesus said, only through me shall you see the face of the Father, isn't this also connected? Because it said, as you read, that the Christ was the director. Like,
Yeah, but that there is something. Hey, you're interpreting there. You see,
also,
he come right out and said, he said, only through me shall you see the face of the Father.
as,
He meant what he said.
right.
All right. What does it say?
Well, that
If you say,
only through me.
all right,
So that fits in with being
does
the
it?
shepherd.
What does it say here about looking through? Anywhere? Anywhere? But it does say about directing him all in one direction. Shows the action of the shepherd, you see. This is the action. He came around and declared himself a shepherd, didn't he? No question about that. That's the symbol he set up in the Christian faith. Geez, how many places have you seen with Jesus standing there with a crook and a flock of sheep? Boy, and he told the truth, too. Believe me, he hit it right on the nail on the head. Just a flock of sheep. Try and get them off of their own thinking. They're thinking like the mass mind. What do you think all these classes are for? Huh? Just to get them off of that. Yes.
And he also said, if I be raised up, then will I draw all men unto me.
That's right. In other words, he's got to be on an upper rung of the ladder, or otherwise he can't pull anybody up to his level. Pretty terribly simple. Nothing mysterious about that. Right, sure. But this is, he says, a uniform direction. You see. Speaking, this is out of his actions. He's always bringing them together. Bringing them together. Paul was doing the same thing. Following the Master's footsteps. Trying to bring them together. Every one of his letters is something mentioned in it about this. Practically. Wants to bring them together because they create a greater force. You see? This is a mathematical fact. Isn't it, Joe? Yeah. Now, there's one particular phrase and statement in here that God chose the love of his incarnate Son as the prime mover of the restored universe. The prime mover. That which he had, the prime mover. His love for people. His love for souls. His love for the individuals. Of course, when you say love for people, you mean because the people, that is the self in the soul. It isn't the carcass, that's for sure. Because who wants to love a carcass? Well, isn't that true? Well, let's put it down right where it is. And the sooner you get to think about it that way, the closer you'll get to Jesus Christ. The closer you'll get to Jesus Christ. This is a reality. You see, I'm trying to break up the sheep aspect in you. Because you're supposed to learn to be shepherds. So I've got to take the sheep and convert them into a shepherd. Well, isn't that right? That's right. But here they're using one motive point of power, you see. Just one aspect of the Christos. And why did the Father use this? Does anybody know? Who? Why?
The little story with love.
What's that?
Prime, that was the prime thing to begin with, love. Well, he created everything with love.
Yes, but we're I'm talking according with the statement. This is the prime mover of restoring, of the restored universe.
I'm saying is he's just starting all over again with what he started originally.
Ah, boy, that's a lot. Yes?
To hold it together, like binding force.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, Joe.
The love was what was lost. That is what has been restored.
Yeah. Yes.
The Father gave unto Jesus the Word, and He gave them unto us. And the Word is given with love.
Gave. See, all the way through. All the entities are gave. A prime mover means a force which is behind all these other things. Remember, we talked last night about that which was behind. Remember? Well, that's what we're talking about. That's a prime mover. You see. Yes.
That which gets things going.
Yes, that's right. Yes.
In other words, the Father had the love to give the Word. You
Yeah.
would have to have the love to give the Word to carry through the command.
To the individual, to the sheep. Boy, does that take something. That really takes something. To love other people. That is something divine. That is something that takes an awful lot of doing. To love other people. Yes.
Well, as you open up to the Christ, love would be natural, wouldn't it?
It's one of the aspects of him, but you know, your idea is all right. It does develop that way, that's for sure. You're right. But how many open up to it? Even those that receive some light, how long will they stay open to it? There's the downfall. There's the point. Right there. How long are they going to stay open to it? That's where in a priest's ordination, I give all my earthly wares, it says in one place. And then you take the eternal vow. Boy, that's really letting go of the whole working. Brother, does that hit you with a ton of bricks after you've gone through it? You find out that there isn't anything left to you. Not a thing. Not a thing. If you try to keep anything of yourself, boy, are you going to have problems. You can get scared to death. Yes. Oh. You can get scared to death because you're afraid you're going to lose something. You know, they come in and tell me after they're ordained, lots of times, I've heard of some of the boys that are real efficient boys too, don't ever think it. And sit down there, you know, in my place and say, Father, you know, I just had to come to see you because I began to see and realize that this ordination service was real. And it really did something to me. Believe me, I can see something that it did to me. Would you think I was giving off a lot of gas or something? You know, it's ridiculous. But it does do something to you. Certainly it does something to you. When you give away this, everything of the earth and everything of eternally in service, why, it's got to do something to you. Because your little ego is going to get awful hurt. Oh boy, it really gets squelched. Really squelched. You know, I told you I was going to discourage every one of you, just as long as I could. And I meant it. You know, there's enough meat in here to keep enough churches going for several years in sermons. Any one little part of paragraph here would be a whole sermon, you know. Of course, it probably wouldn't mean anything, but it's nevertheless the truth. And what we're doing is building a book as a textbook. This is going to be part of your text, which will be part of your untheological theology. You see? Well, that's what it is, isn't it? Universal theology. Yes?
It's almost like being in the position I'm in is being a teacher to unteach.
That's right. That's right. And that's what you got to do. You have to turn around and uneducate them before they can learn the fact that they can do these things and that they are a part of God. It's just like the kids. They come into the world, and when they're babies, they look at you and smile, you know, and wave their little patties, you know, and they really see, you see. And they'll look up and look in some other direction and reach out their hands, you know. He says he's playing, yes. Wouldn't you like to see the way they do? But that poor little cuss, he's got to get uneducated right then. Because as he grows up, he's going to assimilate the understanding from his mother and his father that he can't see and that he's not a spiritual being. And he doesn't have any of these grand and glorious gifts that Jesus told us at the Lord's Supper that he could have and he could use. He learns all these unchristian things. Then we have to take him and uneducate him to this so that he can get back to the place where he was when he was a child, that he can function spiritually. That's just what it amounts to. That is the whole sum and substance of spiritual teaching. It's the whole sum and substance of spiritual teaching is to get you back to the place where you were when you were a baby and function the same as you did then. And then you are an advanced being. Ha! Unless you be as a little child, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. Boy, was he wise. Could he see ahead of time what was really going to take place? He foretold. That was not only a statement of wisdom as far as what is right to do, but it was prophecy in itself. It was absolute prophecy, you see, because that's just the state the people are in today. You included. You're right. Get back to be a little child so that you can function like a Christian, a follower of Christ. And that's what you're trying to do. Or at least that's what you're supposed to be trying to do when you come to these classes. Is there any questions? Christ then clothed his person in the most sensible and most intimate charms of human individuality. He adorned that humanity with the most entrancing, I guess this is a misspelling here, entrancing and most masterful splendors of the universe, and he came among us as the synthesis, surpassing all hope of all perfection, such that every man was necessarily obliged to see and feel his presence, either to hate him or to love him. Now, what about Jesus was there that signified a high state of an individual in the social order of things? Yes.
Well, his attraction, his magnetic attraction is one.
No, that wasn't my question. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the social order. I'm talking about what was seen, what could be seen.
His simplicity.
Yeah, but that doesn't do with social order, yes.
His physical bearing, the way he would handle himself, the way he could speak if it were necessary, all the things that are associated with that particular group, if they were needed.
Yeah, but it was something that showed, yes.
The light.
They couldn't see that. That wasn't anything to do with social order. Yes.
Was it his understanding of...
No. Yeah?
Authority.
You don't see authority.
He attired himself as one of the higher class women.
You wore a seamless garment. Oh, see. He wore a seamless garment. Only those of the teacher and rabbinic class could wear those sort of things. They're too danged expensive. You know, he was no piker, you know. No, I mean that. Can you find me any place in the Bible where Jesus stayed at a poor man's house and ate and stayed there and was housed there? You can't find any place in the Bible where he did. He always went to the upper middle class or the wealthy class. Yeah. What's that?
So he was born in the state.
And that's another thing that's perverted. Because a stable in those places, in those days, was cleaner than a lot of people's living rooms are today. That's a fact. Well, you can go over in Germany and in places like that and go into a cow stable, and it actually is cleaner than a lot of homes here in the city. That was never thought anything of in those days, because they kept their stables really clean. They talk about hygiene. Oh, you could lay down and go to sleep in the cow stable on a mound of hay very comfortably, and you didn't get smelled out of the place or anything. This was nothing unusual in the inn for somebody to go, and when there was a lot of people traveling, to go and sleep in the stable and on a mound of hay and a blanket and so forth. It was nothing unusual. He wasn't being mistreated or anything. they picked to go into the caves afterward, the grotto. Yes.
In one of the books on the life of Christ, it talks about Joseph and Mary being very, very poor, and that's why number one, they had to stay in the stable, and number two, when Jesus was presented in the temple, they gave the poor man's offering of the dove and the 2 shekels.
Well, that was they were directed to.
So they weren't really poor, were they?
No. They were only poor because they gave away just about as fast as they got to the poor and to feed them. To feed the poor, the real poor. They had money, and there was everything. They were constantly supplied by people coming in and giving to them. It was a reality all the way through. Don't forget that Mary was out of a middle-class family. So was Mary's mother, Mary. And she was preparing for 2 generations for this affair. And Joseph was a carpenter, and he built things, even that. Yes.
Was the stable prepared for Jesus? I read something that was written by the Rosicrucians, and they said that the Essenes knew when this was going to happen.
Oh, sure they did.
They had something prepared for.
Well, it could be. It could be. It could be. I don't know. I don't register one way or the other. But this could be because they were very powerful people in those days. They were the artisans of that era.
No doubt they were guided to that.
Oh, sure. Sure they were.
Guided to that to come.
Yeah. That's right. I rambled on here. Oh my. I want to cover one more point, and we close.